afternoon, Stephen. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Paul.
Good. And whereabouts are we having this meeting today?
I'm in sunny Hertfordshire. Oh, it's quite chilly today, but the sun is out. So,
Yeah, because you just said, well, why am I wearing a t-shirt? You thought I might have been in the sun somewhere, yeah?
yeah, I thought you might be on the beach there, but
No, I'm just so I've got two t-shirts on today because it is cold, but the sun has just broken through. But it's really weird because we had really bad rain again this morning. We've had it all over the weekend, and then all of a sudden it stops and we have brilliant sunshine. It's a bit
yeah,
like April showers again we're having.
yeah, the weather has gone a bit weird, really.
Yeah. Do
I
we
think
do we
the
dare
plants are
say that
even confused.
it's linked to climate change? What do you think?
Well, I think the climate is always changing. Whether or not it is changing more quickly, there's lots of more technical people than me and uh, debating that. So I don't think that's an
Yeah,
area we just have to deal with it basically.
I think so. And I think we are seeing some significant changes with the weather spells. And we can only, for me, it's got to be connected to climate change. We can't stop climate change. It's nature. It's going to happen, but we can slow it down. And that's what you and I are here regarding our roles in the industry and what we're trying to achieve. I believe,
Definitely,
anyway.
definitely.
So, Stephen, we have met a couple of times face to face at the good old ENCO conference. And we kept promising that we was going to have a catch up, and we've had the catch up, and we said that we're going to do an interview, and here we are today. So I've met you. I know a bit about you and your business, but for the benefit of our audience today, can you give us some background to Stephen Henry and your origin story?
Okay, my origin story. I've actually been in the energy efficiency business for over 40 years now. Um, Funnily enough, I started work about half a mile, less than half a mile from where I'm talking to you this afternoon.
Wow, that's good.
Um, I left university, I think 1979. It sounds a long, long, long time ago. I was all set to be an accountant, and I ended up taking a year off before um, my articles and went to work for a company down the road selling boiler cleaning chemicals.
Right.
And whilst I was there, I learned about boilers and how boilers operate. And I was horrified to find that boilers were being controlled by the caretaker, the janitor, the odd job person. Um, what controls that were in the boiler house were pretty basic.
Mhm.
And so I got interested in boiler controls and time controls. And to cut a very long story short, I left the company after about 4 or 5 months and got involved selling heating controls for myself.
Right.
Um, and in those days, there weren't really anything in the way of energy management systems.
No.
If you had a sophisticated time clock, it had a 7-day program so that if your office was shut on a Saturday or Sunday, you could um, stop the heating coming on. But a lot of the boiler houses I went into just literally had a 24-hour clock. And so
Hmm.
heating was running all over the weekend. Quite horrific, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so that's how I got involved with heating controls. And from heating controls, we moved into lighting controls. And basically, it's been energy efficiency all the way for the last 42 years.
So, I don't mean, so what happened to the accounting side?
Well,
The
the
passion
accounting
for
side,
efficiency got pushed away, did it?
Yeah, I mean, I did a management sciences degree and was all set to become an accountant. And I would say my education stood me in good stead for running a business,
Yeah,
which I've been running Chalmour Limited since the early '80s, and there's been some tough times.
yeah.
So my financial acumen has been really helpful.
So I'm interested to see the transitions between the heating and lighting. Was that a natural transition?
Well, I think in the same way that heating controls were fairly basic, lighting controls were um, again. I think they were in an office environment. They were almost non-existent
Yeah,
back in the '80s.
just a
You had
switch,
a
wasn't
light
it?
switch.
Yeah,
And I can remember we've always had a sort of gravitated towards schools um, for whatever reason, and the energy management in schools was again almost non-existent back then, and a sophisticated lighting control was we used to do time lag switches so that some of the lighting didn't come on unless the teacher switched the lights on, and then some of the circuits would be timed, so the circuits would then um, switch off automatically.
yeah,
There was no sophistication, no occupancy control, no light level control back then. So the industry today has moved hugely forward. Um, the speed that technology has advanced has really helped. Looking at lighting in particular, back in those days, was the old, there was a lot of tungsten lighting. So
yeah,
moving over to fluorescence was a big saving. Then there were energy efficient compact fluorescents. Chalmers got involved with induction lighting,
yeah,
which was a bit of a niche product. And I think for many years we were actually um, we sold the most or the highest volume of induction lights in the UK. And because we were selling energy efficiency, most of our work was going into existing installations and upgrading what the client already had
hmm,
to improve it. And it was all done on a business case.
yeah,
So changing the lighting to a more efficient source was a big chunk of savings, but then adding energy saving controls onto that was another saving. So we were making huge inroads into the energy bills. Um, and really, with the advent of LED lighting, that's accelerated that 80% savings are possible,
yeah.
um, depending on how low the bar is to start with.
How, like induction lighting? What was the savings with that? Was it still significant?
Yeah, the induction lighting was particularly beneficial in areas where there was maintenance was an issue. So I can remember we did an installation at a large exhibition hall in Birmingham,
Hmm.
where changing the lights was a big problem. Access equipment
Yeah.
was a huge problem. So not just energy savings, but cutting maintenance costs and making life easier for people. Um,
Because
but the
you couldn't change lights when there was an exhibition, could you? In the middle of
No, but the induction lights had 7-8 year lifespan,
right.
and if you were not running that many hours, it'd be over 10 years, which compared to the current lighting at the time was 4 or 5 times the
Yeah.
longevity,
Yeah. And then
plus the energy saving.
LED brought that down even further, then, or increased
Yeah,
the
well,
light.
LED is just, it's a completely different ball game today.
Yeah.
You go back into the 80s and the 90s, where we are in 2023, nearly in 24 now. LEDs continue to do everything even more efficient.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
you know,
interesting because we are now seeing the phase one of LED be replaced now, aren't we? We've been seeing
well,
them upgrade. So what I mean by that, so 20 years ago, probably 2009, I think we started seeing LEDs coming in. And now we're in 2023, we're seeing LEDs being upgraded to the latest version. We're seeing that transition even further. I've seen
yeah, well,
projects that I installed many years ago that are now being replaced again.
yes, yes, and you can't just put in LED lightings and think, oh, job done. It's life goes on, as it were.
It's interesting
I
you
mean,
pick up. It's interesting you pick up a point about controls, because controls really do make the big difference to lighting and obviously heating savings, don't they?
yeah, well, I am first and foremost a controls engineer, so I would echo those thoughts, and really they are the human interface, between you and the light, or you and the heating source.
Yeah.
um, and app technology, having everything on your mobile phone in your pocket, it
Yeah.
means that you can be looking at your or maximizing everything on an ongoing basis. I've recently installed a heat pump in my own house, and I've become obsessed. I have to say, we don't do controls for heat pumps, but I've been obsessed with the control of the heat pump, because literally heat pumps are fantastically efficient, but only if they're installed correctly, and only, as I'm finding out, if the controls are set correctly.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, Stephen, but I am a controls. That's my background.
Good.
I worked for Trend for 10 years and Satchwell for another 6. So for me, controls, BMS comes to the forefront. But there's one big issue that we have with controls: is we have to educate people. We have to make sure that the people around the system understands how the controls are set up, how to support it, and we also have to support it. Is that something that you within your company follow?
Well, I think, as you've just hit the nail on the head, because if the person who is operating the controls doesn't understand them, then no matter how well designed and installed your system and how well it was commissioned, it's not going to last that long, because, as we all know, if the controls aren't set up correctly, then what should have been energy efficient becomes very quickly energy costs you money.
Yeah.
So I think that's bad news. And I think, again, speaking from my recent experience with the heat pump, having an app with a customer friendly user interface has been a real benefit. You don't need to be a controls engineer to use an app. So I think that is changing things as well.
Where do you think your challenges have been? We're going back to the 80s here, and I was in that industry, and for me, it was cost of BMS systems. The only people that had BMS systems in them days were power stations, and we see the cost was significantly high. The quality was low. Where do you think your challenges have been throughout that time and leading up to now? Where the challenges been?
Well, Chalmour has always been, or maybe it's me, I don't know, an innovator. So I think we have always been educating the market.
Right.
And back in the 80s, if you said to somebody, oh, you should be more energy efficient, they'd look at you and think, what are you talking about? What is energy efficiency?
Yeah.
What's that all about? But I think one of the global languages is, I was just about to say pound, shillings, and pence, which which it was back in those days. But it's always been about payback.
Yeah.
And with the current or the recent energy crisis, um, whilst that was obviously put a lot of pressure on everybody's budgets, um, I was disappointed that that didn't really raise the energy efficiency flag. The government, in my opinion, has um, missed an opportunity there to wave the energy efficiency flag, because obviously if you're using less energy, it's costing you less money, never mind how much the cost per kilowatt is. Energy efficiency needs to be first and foremost for everybody, at home, at work, everywhere.
Mm. We have seen a lot of, in my circles of clients and business, I've seen a lot of organizations grasp this issue and reduce their consumption to try and address these increasing costs. But though we've seen the organizations that, you're right, we haven't seen the government. In fact, the government have been, I think, horrendously slow regarding ESOS. We're still waiting for them to sign ESOS off. And we're still waiting for certain things to be released to what ESOS lead assessors need to be doing. So I think they have been slow. Then maybe they've had other things on their plate.
Well, I think that is the problem, not just with government, but it's with everybody. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we do a lot of work in schools,
Yeah.
and budgets have been a huge issue. And with the recent crumbling concrete, that's just blown any focus that schools had on
Yeah.
energy efficiency.
That's a good point,
Gets,
actually.
you know, everybody, I think, in life, certainly post COVID, seems to be juggling plates, as it were, just
Yeah.
trying to keep things moving. And then when a crisis comes up, things like energy efficiency that aren't urgent, they're important, but they always get sort of shoved down the line, as it were.
Yeah. And we also had cladding, didn't we, as well,
Yeah,
after COVID? All the
yeah,
cladding regulations had to be adjusted, and many people had to take out existing cladding and replace it with new.
yeah. I mean, I think one of the challenges has always been investment, trying to get budgets. I mentioned schools. Schools just, what budget they have is going for, the really important stuff, struggling to meet budgets, and there is no adequate energy efficiency funding. I think privately run businesses are um, probably a lot better resource than publicly run
Yeah.
organizations.
We see
So
that. I don't know about yourself, but I see that massively. The differences, the big, large corporate organizations, there is legislation around those, but at the same time, they're getting that legislation guides them into what they need to do. When you start coming further down, the biggest area I think we struggle with, and I think it's the biggest area that impacts on energy, and that's the SMEs. If we could provide more for the SME, guidance and support, government level, I think we could make a significant difference as well.
Well, I think SMEs, for as long as I can remember, has been one of those areas that is full of potential, but getting to that market in a cost-effective way is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Um, I think, slowly SMEs are waking up to energy efficiency. Um, because like any business, you look at your P&L and the energy costs aren't going down.
No.
They are creeping up like everything else.
Yeah.
But the advent of solar, that is an area that is a potential revenue earner for businesses, for schools, anybody that's got a roof. I know at the conference you talking about one of your projects, and that is, I think it's solar it's got so much to offer, plus the fact that it is visible. So you're
Yeah.
actually demonstrating to your customers, your stakeholders, everybody that you're investing in the future.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny though when
unfortunately,
you mention that. If we go back in time a couple of years, planning permission for solar, especially in the city and all around airports, was a no-no. But now that's seemed to slip now. It's not so much of a focus because they need it. We need this. We need to accelerate it.
it needs to be accelerated, but the planning is still horrendous. Again, a project that I'm involved with at the moment, it's been the electricity companies. It just beggars belief the hoops that you have to go through,
Yeah.
and the left hand and the right hand, and just to try and get the approvals through to allow you to do it. Never mind the finance or the money
Yeah.
to pay for the investment.
Well,
Um,
I've got projects where all the finances, all ticks in the box. We're now up against another problem with the DNO, where the DNO is saying, well, yeah, we're happy for this. However, that could export. And if it does export, which it won't export because there's all restrictions on it, we're going to need you to upgrade the infrastructure.
yeah. Well, I've been through the infrastructure loop, and as I said, that was a few challenges. But having
Yeah.
come out the other side, I mean, the ironic thing was that the DNO kept phoning me up to see how their installation team was doing on the infrastructure, and it gave me a great opportunity to chivvy them along on the approval side of it. And even though it was the same DNO, again, it's the left hand not
Yeah.
talking to the right hand.
So they was
But
still they was already installing it, but hadn't give you approval.
yeah, and the nice lady from the DNO, Victoria, was very, very helpful. And she managed I don't know who she spoke to or what she did, but the next day,
It's probably
approval came through. Happy
it's probably
days.
either the next office or the next desk, maybe.
Who knows? But yeah, so I was very happy on Friday.
With your technologies, Steve, are they? You talk about your innovation. Are they still innovating now? We got new things to be coming.
Well, I think innovation hopefully is one of those things that you just keep innovating. I think if you are looking for opportunities, the next um, leap forward, as it were, because as you mentioned, there's LED lighting is advancing, but it's really the application
Yeah,
of that technology that I think is going to be the key. It's all very clever having a super efficient LED that can do X, Y, and Z, but how that gets applied is the trick. Um,
so how about this? I interviewed a technology expert and software last week, and by the time this gets aired, that podcast would have come out, and we talked about AI. Where's your position on AI currently, especially in the heating controls and lighting?
I think AI is very scary, very, very scary. I was on a Zoom this morning, and we got talking about HS2.
Right.
And the guy that was hosting the Zoom, we couldn't agree when HS2 started. So while we were online, he typed into Google, just started to ask Google what was going on. And he didn't even enter the whole of the HS2, and Google came up with the answer, even though he hadn't phrased the whole question.
Right.
And it's almost as though Google was listening to our conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that for me is the scary thing about AI. It's doing things that you don't understand and you don't appreciate. I mean, sure, I think AI has got huge benefits and it offers so much.
Yeah.
But if we're not careful, um, we have to control or direct AI. We can't just let AI
That's
get
a
on
very
with
good
it.
point, because so I read a book recently about AI, and we've got a significant um issue regarding propaganda we've got to address, and the security around this. We could be typing in things and it could be opening up all sorts of security issues, couldn't it? How certain things are wired, or how they're connected, or how you get
So
into certain areas. It could
if
be.
you've got your app on your phone, you're into, never mind what's in the work environment, but at home, if you think how many smart controls and smart devices you have in your home, um, you've got doors open all over the place.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
I typed in exactly what you said earlier. I typed in to Chat GPT, help me write a document around a new product that I want to bring out. It coined it all. Absolutely perfect. It was as if it had been listening to all my ideas. It looked as if it's gone through all my strategy books of what I needed for that document. It is very scary. And me and my mates we were one Sunday afternoon, beautiful day, and we all saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we all had paddle boards?" And we all went out, in the afternoons on our paddle. Within seconds, we'd gone onto Facebook, and paddleboard advertisement were all coming up on our phones and things. So something's listening to it. It's not
somebody,
coincident.
yeah. Uh, and I think, there's obviously some, shall we say, not so nice people out there going to be using it for not so nice things.
Yeah,
But I think, you would hope that the likes of Google and Amazon, what they're trying to do is really to make our lives easier by providing us information about the things that they think we're interested in it.
yeah, yeah.
But I'd rather choose what I'm interested in rather than having Google.
Again, by the time this gets aired, I think there would have been there's a global meeting with all the heads of state to discuss the security of the internet and um, Chat GPT and all of this. So they are aware of it.
Yeah. But if you
And
think back to your controls days, one of the products that I first developed and sold was um, at that time it was state of the art optimum start
yeah,
control.
optimum
Uh,
start stops.
Optimum start, you have to explain to people what the idea of having an optimum start control was. And the novel thing about our optimizer, and bear in mind, I'm going back to 1983, 84, was self-learning. Okay, now can you imagine AI and self-learning?
Yeah,
Because the algorithm that we use was, our best guess.
yeah.
And whilst it learnt over a period of time, um, it was very clunky, whereas AI would have had that sussed pretty well after a
Within
few
minutes.
days.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so for the benefit of our audience, can you explain what optimum start is on a
Right.
building?
Okay, optimum start very simply is if you have a 9 o'clock start time when you want your office or your school to be warm by, the controller then decides when the heating should switch on. If it's a freezing cold winter morning and it's a Monday because the heating's been off for the weekend, the optimizer, if you're not careful, will probably come on at midnight the night before.
Yeah. So you had to limit it, didn't you?
Yeah, well, you see, part of the sophistication was that you could say, right, well, I would accept a 3-hour warm up, because
Yeah.
the way we used to do it was to look at the old time clock that was set at 5 o'clock start, say, for a 9 o'clock morning. So in effect, they'd allowed themselves a 4-hour window to warm the place up.
Yeah.
If it wasn't warm enough, everybody brought in an extra jumper. You know, there weren't many people back then, Paul, that were wearing 2 t-shirts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so in effect, the optimum start would at worst start the heating up in that example at 5 o'clock in the morning. But
Yeah.
if it was milder, it would come on, say, maybe at 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Uh, and that is optimum start. Also, our controller, you know, I'm not saying it was revolutionary, but it was almost revolutionary at the time. If it knew you were going home at 5 o'clock, it would work out, well, could we switch off at 4 o'clock? Because with all the, you know, the fax machines, do you remember fax machines?
Yeah. Blimey.
All the business equipment. We used to do some work in financial institutions. So there'd be the normal getting the office up to temperature in the morning problem. But then once everybody was in the office and they switched on all their telexes, do they still exist, telexes?
I don't think so. No, I think
You know,
we're
big clunky computers, photocopiers, fax machines. There was a complete overheating problem. So, you know, once the place was warm, the next trick was, how can we keep it cool? So guess what they did? Put loads of air conditioning, and then you had the situation where the heating and the air conditioning were fighting each other.
yeah.
But you know, that's back in the 80s. I would hope that's been largely sorted out
We are
now.
still seeing that. We're still seeing areas that are fighting each other with the heating and cooling
Yeah.
significantly. So what else? What other technologies were there? So we had the optimum start stop.
Okay. One of the jewels in my crown is actually won an award in 2006, Shell Springboard, for a smart radiator valve.
Wow. Yeah.
Where we're doing an installation at the moment in a school with 900 smart radiator valves. It's in a boarding school, and the idea is that each of those radiator valves is effectively part of an energy management system for the school. They can control the temperatures, the times in all different areas. Because being a boarding school, you know, the students are in the boarding house, but in the daytime they're in the school.
Yeah.
So they can ring the changes, and they're looking at some significant energy savings as well as maintenance savings, because they have a team of in-house guys that spend a lot of their day walking around the site checking everything's
Yeah.
okay.
And
Whereas now they'll be able to do it
and
from the
also
comfort of the office.
you'd have the seasons where some of the students will go home for the season and some may not.
Yeah,
So there, some great opportunities to reduce energy, isn't there? And
yeah.
not
Well,
great
we
opportunities to waste energy as well if they don't
yeah.
keep control of it.
Well, if you take universities, student accommodation, that is even more the case, you know, because they have students that come from further afield, let's say, that sort of come over in September and are here all year. So
Yeah.
over Christmas, foreign students typically stay over, don't go home, whereas should we say, the local students do go home for Christmas,
Yeah.
but the university still has to keep the heating on for the whole of the accommodation. I mean, it's just crazy, really. But yeah, so smart radiator valves is that's just another product that we've had a very successful innovation with, and now that technology is freely available, to have in your home.
And you've won awards for that, yeah?
Yeah, we've won several awards.
That's brilliant.
But as I say, that goes back to 2006. But it does take the world a long time to catch up with the innovators.
Yeah, exactly. And tell us about the future of your organization now. Where do you see that?
Well, it's almost full circle because mentioning this school project, shifting cardboard boxes with smart technology in it is not the answer. We are one of the reasons we secured that contract was because we are doing an end-to-end project management, install, commission, take complete 100% responsibility.
Right. And service. So it's a service
Yeah,
as well. Brilliant.
and that is okay, one-stop shop, as they say, but it means that the client can get on running his school in that particular case,
Yeah.
and he's got somebody he can trust to implement the project, make sure it's all set up, installed, and working efficiently, which means he's going to get the energy efficiency savings, which was the reason, the financial reason, putting the system in the first place.
Yeah. I think it's quite refreshing because we need to be designing, installing, commissioning, then maintaining these systems. Because when you put these systems in, we get a 30+% saving. But if we don't then educate the people, we don't work with them to support it, that saving will start to go out of control and we'd lose it. But if we're maintaining it, we're going to maintain the savings. And while
Yeah.
we're there, we're possibly going to be looking at the next stage because they might want to extend it. They might want, controls might change the way we do things. Then they might
Oh,
want to make differences.
buildings change constantly, with COVID, the different working patterns,
Yeah.
everything is always changing. I'm reminded of one of your competitors back from your trend day had a slogan where they were selling controls, set it or set them and forget them,
Oh, yeah.
which is, as you were saying, a complete disaster because
Yeah.
if you're not careful, they're doing things that you don't think they're doing until you get your energy bills.
So when I worked for
So,
Trend, I worked for the field services team.
yeah,
My job was to go in and put it right, not because the projects team had done it wrong. It's because the client had then changed their mind about how they're going to operate the building. So originally it was open plan. They were going to have cellular offices or vice versa. That was the simple one. Originally they were 24 hours and then they changed to 9 to 5. So the field services team, I had a job for life really because I was constantly there
yeah.
working with them to make sure that it evolved, the BMS evolved with the organization.
I think also the continual commissioning, the hand holding for the clients, it's very difficult because we all agree it's very necessary, but somebody's got to pay for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And okay, if something goes wrong, then you know they pick the phone up, or do they email now? They don't pick the phone up. I don't know.
I think they
Uh,
still pick the phone up, but yeah,
but most of our clients are reluctant to pay for a service because on the one hand, you're selling them an automation control system um, that is meant to be saving them. As I was mentioning in this school, they've got a system that they can see, feel, and touch from the comfort of their PC. They don't need to go out there. So trying to sell them an additional service is sort of cuts across that.
but the additional service maintains the savings, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that is the hope.
Yeah, that's the way we've got
Um,
to promote it. I think that's
Yeah,
important.
so I think maybe going forward is having integrated control systems with flexibility, metering, monitoring, and combining controls with automatic meter reading and monitoring, so they have a global picture or a global handhold on their complete estate.
So, Stephen, it's come to that time. Time's really flown by, because it always flies by when I'm really into the interview. Is there anything that you can give back to the industry today as a takeaway?
Well, I think I'll just bash the energy efficiency drum, because technology has lots of answers, but at the end of the day, it's how we use the technology that's important.
Yeah.
And if we take energy efficiency and prioritize it, then there's a lot of energy efficiency that you can do, as was discussed at the ENCO conference the other day. Humans perhaps and behavior can affect 50% of the savings without any investment at all, apart from time. So I think do not abdicate responsibility for energy efficiency.
And you mentioned ENCO. There's X amount of case studies proving that. There was 38 people in that room, all nodding and talking about the same things, weren't they, regarding what we were all
Preaching to
trying
the
to do.
converted.
We were, weren't we? But we was all there sort of talking about it. And I think the first time we met, there's probably only 15 people in that room. It's doubling every time we go, and the amount of people that is coming on board, and that understanding. I think we definitely are getting the understanding across the industry regarding people making a difference on the technology. Technology is great, but we do need the people, as you say.
We need the people, and it's it's enthusiasts. It always comes down to enthusiasts.
Yeah.
And there were 38 enthusiasts in that room, and there's probably a lot more out there, but we've got to get them to next year's conference.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd like to say congratulations on your career in the industry and what you've brought to the industry. I think, thank you very much. I've seen your products in the industry, and you need to take a massive pat on the back for your optimum start stop, your valve control on the radiators. You need to take a big pat on the back on that, and I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the industry for that.
Good.
Stephen, thank you for your time today. It's been a
Thank you,
real
Paul.
privilege and an honor. Stephen, I'd like to say, please, you and your family stay safe in these times.
Thank you, Paul.
Brilliant.